Today there are around 720,000 immigrants in Norway, almost 400,000 more than it was 10 years ago. How does this affect Norway, both our culture and our economy? We really look forward to discussing this with you during tonight's meeting. Today we are joined by Sara Szepalska and the project leader of digitalization at Catalyst. We're also joined by William Paintsill, the head of Migrate Training and Integration Support Unit at the International Organization of Migration. Welcome to Samfundsmøte. My name is Tale, and I will lead tonight's meeting.
And my name is Kristoffer, and I will be the secretary of this meeting. The rest of this point will be in Norwegian. Styret har følgende forslag til dagsorden. Oi, der var det feil titel. Punkt 1, møtet er satt. Punkt 2, styreprotokoll. Punkt 3, politisk 5 minutter. Punkt 4, innledning ved Sara Szepalska. Punkt 5, innledning ved William Paintsill. Punkt 6, kunstnerisk innslag ved Salongorkesteret. Punkt 7, pause med taffelmusikk. Punkt 8, sofaprat med spørsmål fra sal. Punkt 9, eventuelt. Punkt 10, kritikk av møtet. Og punkt 11, møtet er hevet. Kan storsalen godkjenne dagsorden slik den foreligger ved akklamasjon? Tusen takk.
We're now ready to move on to point number 3, which is 5 minutes of politics. So if anyone has something they wish to share with storsalen, you are welcome to do it now. Okay, since there doesn't seem to be any speakers at this point, we can move on to our first speaker of the evening. So please welcome Sara. I'm not going to pronounce that, I'm just doing it wrong anyway. But please give Sara a warm welcome.
Hello everyone, it's good with the light facing you, don't see any of you guys. My name is Sarah. I work with an organization called Catalyst. It's a mentorship organization. And what we do is that we work with youth with migrant backgrounds, putting them in touch with people in their local community to strengthen their skills, improve their self-efficacy, so their belief in their own abilities to impact their own lives. And we work to promote knowledge and inclusion for the mentors so that they take what they learn in their relationships and through this course with them into the local community, to their jobs, to their networks, to have ripple effects of this positive relationship that we try to create. That's part of my background, and because we use a strength-based approach in this program, it's also something that I will use as a foundation for the argument that I'm making here tonight. So I'm going to focus on 2 perspectives tonight that I think will inform this debate about lykkejegere, or fortune hunters. And that is the liability approach to migration and the asset-based approach to migration. But first, I want to see a show of hands, if I can see it. How many people in this room were born and raised in Norway in the past 40 years? Okay, that's a lot of you. So that lot of you is a very lucky and special bunch. And the reason I think you're a lucky and special bunch is that you are quite unique in the world. You have only faced the concept of having to move to another country to improve your life conditions as a hypothetical one. For almost every other country in the world, growing up with the idea that there's another place where you can move that is better than your current condition for yourself and your family, that's the reality. But in Norway, that's not something that we actually deal with. That is also the pull factor that makes Norway such a desirable country, and it's something that we brag about. We're the happiest country in the world. We are the most equitable country in the world, at least we claim that in different areas. We have beautiful nature, we have fresh air. There are a lot of good things about living in Norway. That's why a lot of people also want to come and live here too. So the pull factor is only one aspect of the migration process. We often talk about pull factors and we talk about push factors. When we want to talk about push factors with regards to migration, am I going too fast? Okay. when I'm talking about push factors with regards to migration, it's interesting to look at the definition of an immigrant, especially in a Norwegian context, to understand what is it that pushes people to leave their countries. So in a Norwegian context, an immigrant, according to the Statistics Sentralbyrå, is someone like me. I'm a second-generation immigrant. I have a Polish father, a Canadian mother, born and raised here. There's also a person who arrived last week with a permanent residency to stay in Norway. It can be a refugee who has escaped war to come to Norway. It can be family members that are finally unified after years apart, but have now gone through the tedious process of being granted stay in Norway. It's also a lot of people who come from labor. You can have people in the tech sector, you have people in construction, you have people in the caretaking industries. All of these people are termed migrants. So when we talk about how migrants are impacting Norway, we have to be conscious of all the different things that people are seeking out in Norway and why they left their country. These categories create some nuance, and I hope that your questions after will go deeper into that nuance. So the common denominator for all these immigrants that come to Norway is that they want a piece of the pie. It's really good to live in Norway, and they see opportunity there. They are fortune hunters, however you want to interpret that. They want to improve their lives. Now, in Norway, because we have such a nice community, we have all this wealth, we are a little bit hesitant about sharing. The idea that sharing is caring doesn't go that far. Also, the idea that this person is a fellow human being, of course I will extend the exact same rights and benefits to this person as myself, somehow also stops at our borders. But there is one way where we can make this question a bit more palatable for the people in influence, the people who write in the papers, the politicians, the people who influence how the greater society sees the question of immigration. That is if we dehumanize people and make them into numbers. So that's how I'm going to present these two different perspectives. The first set of numbers that I'm going to talk to you about is something that you probably already heard about this year, this fall. Has been a lot in the newspaper. And that is the statistical SSB, Statistisk Sentralbyrå, Central Bureau's immigration accountancy, innvandringsregnskapet. So this was a report that was commissioned by the financial department and a gang of academics that wanted to know how much does immigration cost? What is the cost of immigration? That was the guiding question for these statisticians to look into the question of immigration. So what the conclusion they found was that immigration costs a lot. In fact, they said that it costs, within the year 2100, they assumed that we would be 29% immigrants in our population, and that would cost us 10,000 kroners per person per year. This is a big number. I don't want to necessarily give 10,000 extra kroners away to the state. That's a scary thing. It is a number that is being now marshaled by current government to maybe make arguments for the fact that we maybe should restrict immigration, because that's a lot of money. In a family of 4, 10,000 kroners per person is only 40,000 kroners per person. Sounds like an enormous cost. Now, there's been a lot of debate around the details, the methods, the models that these statisticians put underneath as the foundation for developing this report, and we can get back to those later in your questions, I hope, as well, because it's interesting to look at how do we come to the conclusion that immigration costs us a lot. Because when we come to that conclusion, we see immigration as a liability, and that is one very specific approach to it. Another approach that you can also take to immigration is to view it as an asset-based process. And a country that does that through their statistical bureau is Canada. There's this bureau called StatCan, the equivalent of SSB in Canada, who's also done a bit of research. Now, they haven't done a statistical analysis, but they've done surveys. And from the years 1999 to 2005, they did a survey over 7,900 workplaces and 20,000 workers, trying to see what impact diversity had on Canada. And their conclusion was, it's great, it's beneficial. They found that for every 1% of increase of ethnocultural composition in a team, a company would have 2.4% of increase in their revenue. And they would also have 0.4 increase in their productivity. And they also concluded that the reason for this was that when a company or a workplace reflects the composition of the population. They can better anticipate the needs. They can better anticipate the desires and the behaviors of people that they're trying to serve through creating products or services, etc. So the conclusion here was diversity as a consequence of immigration to Canada is great. Now, these two research reports are two very different pieces of work. It's kind of weird to compare Canada, that's a different country, to Norway. They have a different demography, different geography, different history, and the methods for acquiring these numbers are completely different. So why am I comparing apples to oranges? The reason is both Norway and Canada are immigrant receiving countries. People want to come here. And I think that it's valuable to compare them because we practice so different approaches to how we view immigration in our countries. Now, if we want to take the approach that immigration is a liability, kind of fucked, because immigration is increasing. If we look around in the world, there are migrants that are internally displaced, externally displaced, moving not only within their countries from war-torn situations or conflict or political persecution, but also across borders. That isn't going to stop. Climate change, a lot of things are going to impact the fact that a lot of people want to migrate. So if we're going to hunker down, create Fortress Norway, we're going to have a big hurdle. But this is, I claim, the governing discourse that our government is making. An unfortunate aspect of that governing discourse also is that it leads to fear of people who are different from us. And it doesn't really look at what positive things we can do. However, an asset-based approach, looking at the good things that we can produce if we build on the strengths of people, can lead to more positive inclusion of people. It leads to an empathy towards people who are different from us, and it allows us to be more productive with regards to how we see the flow of new people coming into our country. Now, I believe that we have an advantage in taking this approach, not only because we have a fantastic welfare state that we did build that has the mechanism of distributing goods across population in an equitable way, and therefore we should be able to repeat that success, but also because Norway has a lot to gain, and they can gain from what Canada's called the diversity dividend, to make advantages of how we are different, the different kinds of knowledges that we have, and how we can put that to good use. Was going to talk about how specifically we can ensure that an asset-based approach to immigration is a success and the implementation of it, but I hope maybe you can ask me questions about that later, and I would happily talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I really hope the audience has questions for our speakers after the break. Now, will you please welcome our next speaker for the evening, William Painstill.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me. I'm nervous because my son is in the audience. He is going to tell my wife about my performance, and that is not good. I can feel my heart beating very fast. So if there is a medical student here, my blood group is 0. O positive is my blood group. I'm originally from Ghana, and I migrated to Germany, Düsseldorf, not as a labor migrant, but then as a student. And then I migrated to Brussels, Belgium, as a student migrant. And then I came to Norway, not as a student migrant, but as a childhood innvandring, as you say in Norwegian. I've been working for the International Organization for Migration since 2003, and IOM is an intergovernmental organization which was established in 1951 after the Second World War. We believe that if migration is managed properly, everyone will benefit. I keep telling people who want to listen to me when I'm talking about migration is that nobody can stop migration. It's like osmosis. Nobody can stop it. We can regulate migration. We can try to manage it. So instead of us finding ways of how to manage it to benefit all of us, some are just saying, no, migration is not good, or migration is good or bad. Anyway, what do I do in IOM Norway? We have a project for asylum seekers who have come to Norway and their application has been rejected. If you get a rejection, it means you either have to leave Norway or you live here illegally, which has so many disadvantages, or you travel to Germany and seek asylum again, and you become something known as a Dubliner. The Germans, when they find out that you came to Norway to seek asylum, will bring you back to Norway, and Norway will deport you. You can also stay, and then the Norwegian police will deport you to wherever you came from. And sometimes it has happened that somebody came to Norway and the person said he's originally from Ivory Coast. But then the Norwegians will say, no, you are not from Ivory Coast, you are from Sierra Leone. And then you'll be sent to Sierra Leone. And this has so many implications. And then you can also come to IOM, and we will assist you to get a travel document. We will assist you to travel back to your country of origin. If you travel back with the Norwegian police, they normally will hand you over to the authorities in your countries of origin. And most of the time, these countries, they don't like the idea that you came to Norway to seek asylum. So, and again, in Norway, so many people talk about the voluntariness of the program. We call our program Assisted Voluntary Return and Reintegration Program. And somebody who has no idea discussing how voluntariness is a program. And I tell them that if you come to our office and you meet an asylum seeker who really is fed up living in a reception center, without going to school, without reading, like wasting his or her time, then maybe a good option for the person is to go back. And then we have this program which I supervise. It's called the Norwegian Cultural Orientation. UN refugees that have been given the right to come and live in Norway, before they come, we give them cultural orientation about Norwegian life and society. We tell them about the cold weather in Norway, which sometimes they think it's scary. But then we tell them, look, 5 minutes, you dress warmly, you fix the problem. Norway will give you money, Norway will give you accommodation, but there are serious challenges like learning a language. If I come to you, sir, and I ask you, what is your name in my mushmore, you can't answer me, even though you are highly educated. So not knowing a language can make you a baby. So there's this aspect of learning a new language. And then, how do you make friends? Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to have friends. And then you meet somebody and, please, can you snack a man norske? Meanwhile, the person just arrived, So the Norwegian government believes that UN refugees coming has to be given information about Norway before they can come to Norway. And when they come to Norway, they attend introduction program, which equip them to be productive citizens. In 2010, 11, and 12, IOM developed a project for Polish construction workers. And this project was funded by the Norwegian Directorate for Integration and Diversity and the Norwegian Trade Union. When Polish construction workers started coming to Norway, they came to work, labor migrants. They didn't know anything about the Norwegian labor sector, and they were having problems. Most of them were underpaid. They didn't know about their rights. So IOM decided that let's develop a project and give information to 25 Polish construction workers. Information included the Norwegian labor laws, their rights, their responsibilities, taxation system in Norway. And after giving them training about these issues, they went out to tell other Polish construction workers about what they've learned. So they were resource persons and multipliers of information. So this project went on for 3 years. The second year, we had it in Oslo and in Stavanger. First year in Oslo. And the third year, we had Lithuanian construction workers. Labor migration. Birds in Europe fly to Africa when the temperature is cold in Europe. So human beings, we would want to move to a better place. And not that we are moving to go and just enjoy. I've come into contact with over 5,000 or even more refugees, and they all say one thing: I want to come to Norway to come and work. So this whole idea that people are moving to a new society just to enjoy the social welfare, it is not true. You can quote me that I said this. It is not true. And of course, when you go to a school, you wouldn't find a classroom where everybody gets a 6 or everybody gets a 5. If there are 10 labor migrants coming to Norway, definitely there will be 1 or 2 who will be struggling. But most of the time, majority will be working and they'll be contributing into the new society that they live in. As I said, migration will continue to happen. Some will be forced to migrate. Some will migrate voluntarily. Some will migrate and after 1 year, 2 years will go back to their countries of origin. Some will never go back. You may want to know if I'm going to go back to Ghana. Maybe I may go back to Ghana, but as at today, I'm not going anywhere. So you should better get used to me. Migration is not going anywhere. Migration started when, whether you believe in evolution or you believe in the creation of man by God or Allah, there has always been movement, and this is going to continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, William. Before we continue with a short break, we will be joined by Samfunnets own lounge orchestra. So please welcome Salongorkestret. us entertained during the break. We will now go into an about 15 minutes break and we'll be back around 5 to 8. Enjoy your break. Kan salen falle til ro? Oh, welcome back. Now we're ready for point number 8, which is a chat with the speakers. So if Sarah and William can join Jan Henrik in the couch. We will also open the speaker list right now. So if any one of you want to ask any questions, you can sign up by Anne on the side of the podium over there. And Jan Henrik, you can just take this point forward.
Working. Thank you both for nice opening statements. I thought I would start off by talking about something you said. You were talking about these narratives and how you can have an asset-based or liability-based view of migration. Why is it that in recipient countries we often get a liability view of migration?
I believe that it is because we have a null-sum idea of our assets or resources in Norway. That we think that if more people come to the party, there will be less to go around.
Okay, but for instance, Norway is a welfare state, so there is the Norwegian budget is finite. So why couldn't we, in that way, consider it a zero-sum game?
I disagree with that. So it is only finite because of the amount of money that we pay in taxes. So if more people were to pay more taxes, we would have an increasing budget.
Okay, because that's where you and the people who made the innvandringsregnskap or the immigrant accounting, I don't know, they calculated how much an immigrant costs. And if an adult male comes at the age of 25, until he dies, he costs the Norwegian state a significant sum, between 50 and 100,000 kroners every year, on average. For a migrant.
Yeah. So there are a lot of parameters that go into that sort of calculation. You assume something about their education level, about their income level, that they won't earn as much as an equivalent ethnically Norwegian person in the labor market. But that model also doesn't take into account unemployed Norwegians or people with disabilities. That also costs the society a lot. So the fact that, what William also said, that 1 in 10 labor migrants might not be the top performers. Absolutely, that is a risk of allowing more people into the country, but it's a risk that already exists in our country too.
Because William said that we don't really have a choice in taking more people into the country. So how can you defend that? We have control of our borders. So if we wanted, why couldn't we just say, no, you people can't come in. Nobody else could come in. We just want to be the 5.2 million people we are, and then we shut our borders. Why can't we do that? You said it was impossible.
It is impossible because if we don't come in, you guys will go and marry us and bring us to Norway. So, but I'm not against managing migration. Okay. At the end of the day, the Norwegian government has a right to decide who has a right to come to Norway and who shouldn't stay in Norway. Secondly, I think people should be given the opportunity to talk about their fears, their concerns. You know, because if you don't do that, maybe the fear you have is not right. You don't have correct basis. So if I hear it, I can correct you. You know, but you believe in your falsehood. You are in your corner. You don't want to listen to. It's like if you are right wing, you just listen to right wing speakers, and you don't want to listen to the other side. So how can you change your opinion, you know? So there's this fear of, I don't want to change my stand. Probably if I listen to the other side of the story, I may see migration as something good. And I don't want to see migration as something good, you know? So we should be talking about such things.
Okay, so you were talking about Canada at our dinner earlier. We had dinner earlier. Okay, that came out the wrong way. All of a sudden. But you were talking about Canada, which did immigration surveys instead of trying to calculate the worth of each migrant. why is that a more correct approach to figuring out the value of migrants?
So, precision. Canada has a statistics department that does statistics too. And it's not necessarily more valuable to do a survey, but I think that a quantitative and a qualitative approach can be complementary to one another, so that the qualitative approach that they had in this survey, even though they counted number of workers in teams and profits, which are numbers and quantitative, you gain more context and perhaps a greater understanding of what the conditions of diversity was in Canada.
Because have the Canadians done a study similar to the Norwegians of exactly how much it costs for Canada to take in a migrant?
The Statistics Canada, as far as I know, hasn't done a stat analysis on this, but a researcher by the University of British Columbia, Dan Hebert, has done a statistic analysis of the worth of immigrants, but he has also then, in that same study, compared it to the worth of Canadians.
And even Canada has a less extensive welfare state than Norway. So isn't that an argument in favor of limiting migration more severely to Norway? Because Norway offers a lot of things, like free education. Canada doesn't have zero tuition public universities for everyone. The Norwegian healthcare system is one of the most extensive, though not insanely expensive in the world. Doesn't that mean that we have to be more restrictive about who we let into our country? Because our welfare state has a finite amount of money, because every Norwegian is a detriment to the welfare state. It costs a lot of money, even for us native-born. So doesn't that mean we should try to preserve it by limiting migration?
I mean, there are two different cases there of being conscious of who we let in and how many people we let in. Of course, it will be a burden to the welfare state to have more people come in, but then again, I think that we can see opportunities in how these new people can also contribute to the welfare state, so that we don't assume that any new person who comes to Norway as an immigrant will necessarily be a burden on the welfare state.
Yeah, okay. And just before we start taking questions from the audience, by the way, Tyler Stewart is first in line and Lars Grennestad is second in line, so if you two can start making yourself ready. Then I just wanted to ask William one last question of how you said that Norway has a right to control its borders and its migration. If you were to decide, how would you, on behalf of Norwegians, decide who gets in and how many people gets into Norway?
I would like to help those who are already in Norway.
Okay.
Deciding, no. Okay. Give it to somebody else.
Okay. So you think that should be left to the Norwegian government?
That would be a bit challenging for me. And it has to be on individual cases, you know. But being an African, I've heard so many times that it costs so much to bring in Africans. And I wish somebody can tell me how much the Norwegian government has spent on me. I have two boys who were born in Norway. They are doing well. They are studying. One is here, but they are very young. And I think they will be working and paying taxes that will cover all the money that is spent.
Yeah, true.
No. But seriously, I think the issue of who comes in and all, we leave it with the politicians. But those who are in, how do we help them so that they can contribute in creating wealth in Norway?
That is indeed a huge problem, yes?
Yeah, just addendum more to your question than your response. That Norway doesn't really target a lot of labor migrants to attract the most talented workers. It's not a strategy that the Norwegian government does use. For example, the Canadian government has a point system that awards your education level, how much money you bring into the country. Like 60% of migrants in Canada in the past 5 years are millionaires. There's a millionaire migrant visa in Canada. That impacts, I'm not saying that that's definitely a strategy to go, but that impacts how people see migrants as resources versus other people. And if we were to perceive migrants on a whole, this diverse group, as consisting of members who are millionaires and talented people in all these multifaceted ways, I think it would also be more bearable to have the people who we consider burdens to the welfare state.
So it seems like the Canadian system is far better at making the people appreciate migration than the Norwegian way. I think your mic is a bit high up. I can put it next to your mouth. It's probably the best. Let's just go to the question. Tyler, would you?
Can I just say something before Tyler asks his questions? We now have the following 7 people who want to ask a question, which is Tyler Styret, Lars Grønstad, Thea André Harnes, Anders Såstad, Marianne Vågan, Elise Michaelsen Steinsland, og Hugo Klævold. Can Storsalen accept that we put a line to the speaking list after Tyler's question? Thank you.
That means there's no speakers.
Good evening, Storsalen. My name is Tyler and I'm a member. Thank you very much, Sarah and William, for joining us here tonight. It's been wonderful to listen to your discussion. I can't help but notice that a lot of what has been said tonight has been overwhelmingly positive towards labour migrants. And I'd like to take some time for us to discuss the challenges associated with labour migration and specifically standards of work. I mean, here in Norway, we have particular standards with which we expect people to perform their jobs. And when we have labour migrants coming in, whether they're doctors, construction workers, teachers, whatever that may be, we have to ensure that they perform their jobs to a particular standard. What is being done to ensure this? And if there is a deficit in the work that they're performing, who's responsible to pay for their training to make sure that they're doing their jobs correctly? Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. William, do you want to start on that question?
I think sometimes the government should pay, and Norwegian government is paying for quota refugees who come to Norway. There is a program called the Introduction Program. It's a 2-year program, and they will learn the Norwegian language. They will learn about the Norwegian society. They will be placed in companies as job praxis and språk praxis and those things, you know. And the reason why the Norwegian government is doing that is for them to qualify themselves to work in Norway or to go to school. And that is a way of contributing, paying back to the society. And I think employers can also do that. We had a project for Polish construction workers, and the trade union gave money together with the Norwegian government. And then also rich people coming from Canada should be able to fund learning Norwegian. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if an individual can pay to learn the language, yeah, why not?
And another quite related subject that we talked about at dinner is that can be quite difficult to get your education recognized, your degrees recognized, your competence recognized. How can we solve that problem and use our refugees and other migrants with the doctorate or who are medical doctors, engineers, lawyers? How can we get to recognize their education and make sure it's on par with Norwegian, and then get them to working on productive things instead of having them as janitorial staff when they have a 10-year education?
When I came to Norway, there was NOKUT. The name has changed. And NOKUT, I think, is doing a wonderful job. We had a conference in Oslo, IOM and UIO. We had a conference on refugee contribution. And we had a speaker from NOKUT who shared at the conference what NOKUT is doing. If you come to Norway and you say, let's say, you did engineering, but you don't have any diplomas to show that you did engineering, NOKUT work with university professors, and you'll be assessed based on whatever information. And so I know that a few refugees have gone through this assessment, and they are working in Norway. So at least NOKUT has moved on, and I know also for a fact that some European countries visit them to learn from these innovations. So there is something good happening in Norway. Yeah.
Sarah, do you want to chime in on this? Or?
I know that certain countries do practice skills recognition exchange. so that if you, for example, have a medical degree from Poland, a lot of Norwegians even go to Poland to get their medical degree, that is mutually recognizable. So agreements like that with different countries is one way of making sure that you can have labor migration with your credentials.
Okay, I'll just want to remind the Storsal that we are allowed to ask questions in Norwegian, or you are, I'm not. I'll translate your questions if you ask them in Norwegian. And then Lars Grønnestad can ask his question, and Thea can make herself ready.
And the speaker list is now closed.
Hi, my name is Lars, and I'm a member. You've kind of touched the subject, but I'm want to try to get a clear answer from both of you if you want to answer. So Sarah, you mentioned that an SSB's calculation estimated that a migrant would cost 10,000 kroners each year. But then I started thinking, I'm a Norwegian citizen, and I've been costing, I think, millions every year since I was born. So why is the 10K so bad? Because when people migrate when they're adults, they usually have some sort of education and skill, and they just start contributing. They go to school for 2 years, I think, to learn Norwegian, and then they start working. So the cost to get them into the working force is much lower than me, who studied here for like 7 years and get study loan. And it's, yeah. So why is that? Why is that considered such a bad thing? Thank you.
A good question.
Good question.
Thank you. There is some nuance to this. So, to be precise, the 10,000 kroners is per person in Norway would have to pay this, and not just per immigrant. So it is a more substantial amount of money. But still, your point is valid, that someone who comes here ready trained from another situation or another country could be considered an asset. And part of perhaps the critique against this report from SSB is that it is created in a vacuum. It doesn't take into account different changes in the economy. It's made on very fixed models and calculations, and it doesn't use a comparative analysis with the Norwegian population at large. It doesn't take into account the increasing disabilities or early retirement ages of the Norwegian population. So it does give us quite a narrow view of the cost of immigrants.
There is a book called Lying with Statistics. And I'm not doubting that study. Who am I? I'm an ordinary person. But how do you calculate that? How do we come to a conclusion which is true for all the migrants? How do we, it's like saying that Norwegians are like this. Norwegians are cold. And I've met Norwegians who are not cold. So how do we make such conclusions? You know, if I encounter a negative incident with a Norwegian, naturally, I would generalize, make a fallacy of hasty conclusion. Oh, Norwegians are like this, you know. And unfortunately, that is how some politicians talk, creating an image which is not true for everyone. What can we say about Norwegians which is true for Norwegians living in Vadsø or Norwegians living in Alta and Hammerfest and those things?
So, but can't we say that these generalizations, even though they are not true for every migrant, they have a certain predictive value for the average migrant? Isn't that a valid point, that generalizing is useful, because, and that's why we do it a lot, because it tells us something about the average migrant?
That is a danger.
Okay. And
That is a danger.
why is that dangerous?
Yeah, it is. You know, we generalize to make complex things simple. We are afraid to take up serious issues. When we start going to school, we start learning so many subjects. When we go up, we reduce it. So we end up being made so reductionistic in our thinking. You're a specialist in heart. You don't want to know anything about the liver. Meanwhile, if you have a problem with the heart, it can affect all other parts of the body, you know. So that is how we've been programmed, you know. So yes, it is true that sometimes we have to generalize, but you don't generalize when you are creating simple pictures for human beings. I'm an African, it's true. I'm a Ghanaian, it is also true. And I'm a Norwegian, yes, it is true. How would you, I go to offices, they see me, they start speaking English. I answer in Norwegian, they continue speaking in English. So the person has assumed that han snakker ikke norsk. I know my Norwegian is not as good as my son's Norwegian. But, you know, you create a mental picture based on what we've read in the media. And I read in Scientific and American that when the brain takes hold on falsehood, it takes a long time for the brain to change the falsehood to the truth. And
thank you.
So don't generalize.
Thea, can you ask your question now? And Anders can get ready.
Ærede storsal, my name is Thea Harnes André, and I'm a member here at Samfundet. I'm also head of culture in the ISFiT 19 festival, and our theme this year is migration. I'm very excited to be here and listen to you. My question is concerning how migrants are treated in their receiving countries. Because we often hear stories that migrants are exploited because they're such a vulnerable group. But the stories that we hear are often from other countries than Norway. For example, Asian countries. So my question is, how, in what way or to which regards are migrants exploited or taken advantage of in a Norwegian context, and how can we change that, if so? Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to start? You are working with vulnerable youth, so...
I am working with vulnerable youth. To my knowledge, the exploitation of them hasn't started in the labor market yet. So I don't know individual basis, nor do I know the case in Norway, but I can speak a little bit to how we can protect against it. And that is by creating legislation that creates rights for the people in these positions and to not tie certain privileges. For example, your immigration status should not be tied to the person that you work for, that you should have the freedom to be able to seek other opportunities and that you're not subject to one person's will. And if we have a legislation around it, there's at least one guiding factor that can protect people in vulnerable positions.
And William, during the dinner you were talking a bit about human trafficking, people getting their passports taken away from them and exploited when they arrived in Norway. They were promised jobs, and then the people who brought them here just take away their passports and push them into unsavory trades.
No, I was talking about victims of trafficking. These are individuals who were promised something great, and then when they arrived in the country of destination, these bad guys will collect their passport from them, will force them to either become prostitutes or they are not handled well, you know. So if they manage to run away or they know about an organization which can help them, yes, they are giving assistance. You know, in Norway, we have, for example, Arbeidstilsynet. In Oslo, a few months ago, they went around to the washing bays and they found out that most of these guys were really being underpaid. You know. So Norway also has systems in place that will ensure that people will not be discriminated against. But
I want to come with a counterexample of that, because we have a lot of Eastern Europeans here. It's the largest migrant group to Norway. And Poles, for instance, work a lot in the construction industry. And there they are systematically underpaid. Why?
I mean, part of the answer is that being underpaid allows them to win contracts. So you can argue that there is some self-selection in offering to do a job for a cheaper price than what unionized Norwegian workers would do. Also, that money, that income that is lower than what unionized Norwegian workers would gain would still have a lot of value when it is remitted back to Poland.
But the Norwegian law says that you have to follow the same tariffavtale, or the union contract, for everyone in the same industry. So how do they sneak around it? So do you want to?
I mean, sneak around it. I imagine that they don't report their earnings. I mean, it's a trope even in Norwegian media and amongst politicians that we know of that have used illegal labor to construct their docks or redecorate their houses, for sure. And of course, that is the responsibility of the employee, but also the person who contracts them to make sure that they have contracts in place and recognize that this is a legitimate exchange.
Thank you. And Anders, can you ask a question then? And Marianne can prepare herself.
Oops. Honorable Assembly, my name is Anders Saastad. Some time ago, the Norwegian government put forward these two reports. It was the Brochmann II report and the Perspective report. Among other things, it talks about immigration, and that immigration is going to cost us quite a lot, and it's going to be a challenge to the welfare state. Thinking of this also, when we hear about they're probably going to be less jobs in the future because of digitalization and robotization. So I have a question for you, Sarah, that you talk about viewing migration as an opportunity, but how is this going to actually work out when there are going to be less jobs and things are probably going to get some tougher? So I just wonder about that. Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Well, part of the assumption that we have halve folket I arbeid, or half of the people working because of the robots are coming, is also surely because we don't want to work, or we will earn enough money from this robotization to afford not working. And I would imagine that people who are part of our population would also benefit from part of that robotization or digitization. But I could also imagine that if I take this asset-based approach to immigration, that people who have different experiences and competences would be able to see new digital opportunities within the markets that they came from or other populations that they know, and see new solutions that could also generate new efficiencies.
Thank you.
Can I
say
something? According to ILO, International Labour Organization, there are approximately 150 million migrant workers in the whole world. And out of this, 71.1% are in the services sector. I don't know if you guys, the nano engineers, and you are going to create robots that will be making hospital beds and will be cleaning old people. That they may make computers that will be making cars and computers, you know, robots making cars and computers. So definitely there will always be the need for human beings to be employed. If immigrants in Norway should go on strike just for a day, and I hope this wouldn't happen, so many things won't function, you know. And we also have in the agri sector, we have 11% until we make robots that are going to plant potatoes and maize and corns and all those things. Even if it's going to happen, the computers are going to take over, we wouldn't even be around to see them take our jobs. And
so basically, a lot of the jobs migrants do are safe from being automated?
yeah, at least not in the next 5 years or 10 years.
Thank you. And Marianne, can you ask your question now? And Elise, can you prepare yourself?
Honorable Storsal, my name is Marianne, and I'm a member. I have a question about migration and gender. According to the report from Statistisk Sentralbyrå, a total of 39% of all women between the age of 20 to 66 that are refugees are dependent on welfare, receiving that from the government, trygd. Why is that, and how can we combat that? Because compared to men, it's only 26.1%. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Who wants to go first on that?
Okay. Some of the women who come to Norway, okay, if you are a housewife in country A and then you come to Norway, it will take a while for you to first learn the language and then also get a job. So most of the time the women come in haven't worked before, they've never been to school before. And part of my work, me and my team, we travel around Norway talking about migration culture to municipal workers. So if there are teachers in the audience, we tell them, you know, being a teacher doesn't mean you go and stand in front of your students and you say, in Norwegian grammatic, verb må være på andre position, if a person hasn't been to school before. So that one has to change the method of teaching. And some countries are doing that. So that is why I believe that if the government invests money on qualifying or equipping these women to do something, you know, they don't have to be doctors. You don't have to have a degree to be a Barnehage assistant, you know. And some of them would love to do that. I've met refugee women who came to Norway without education, and they are doing something. So people would want to do something. They want to be assisted to know what first they want to do, and then how they will do it. Norway is a society where information is very important. So, yeah, it's about information and how to help people.
Short response for you as well.
Okay, very short. A lot of women who migrate, or women are more likely to migrate with other people, most likely their family structures, and many of women who migrate into Norway, in especially refugee situations, migrate in a family structure where the father is a breadwinner, consequence of a patriarchal family structure. And in Norway, of course, we expect that people will contribute to society, and sometimes this family structure is a challenge. That doesn't mean that we automatically should expect them to abandon cultural traditions that they come from, but it is where we can practice education, have family centers, also provide opportunities for women to provide or to have language courses at the same time as childcare is provided, so that they can break out of the mold of being a housewife or being the sole caretaker at home.
Thank you very much. Elisa, can you come to the lectern? And can Hugo prepare himself to ask his question?
Honorable Storsal, my name is Elisa. I'm a member, and I'm also head of theme for ISFiT 19. So thank you so much for coming and talking about the very important issue of migration. My question is more related to the countries the labor migrants are leaving, because we know that a lot of the people are highly educated, and some of them leave to work in Norway but send their salaries back. So how is that affecting the countries they leave? Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to talk about brain drain?
Oh, brain drain. Yeah, sure. Sorry, how the fact that the salaries are going back is affecting Norway, or how the brain drain is affecting the original country?
Just talk about the salaries going back.
Well, first, the fact that a lot of labor migrants don't spend their money in Norway. They pay taxes, yes, that's great, goes to the welfare state that we're so worried about, but that they don't spend as much money in the markets also impacts our economy, definitely. It is the consequence of being in a global economy. We benefit also from these global circuits in the places that we sell our oil products, or how we benefit from production in other places. So the fact that remittances are part of the global economy is a consequence of migration and means less spending money in Norway.
But it doesn't hurt. Does it hurt the Norwegian economy much, or? And do you know how much money is being lost from Norway in remittances every year?
I don't know that number. I imagine migrants send home a lot of money. That's one of the biggest economies in the world, remittances.
Did you say Norway will lose money through remittances?
Yeah, what I said was if migrants send money home to their home countries, does anyone of you know how much we lose, and is it a detriment to the Norwegian economy that migrants send money home in remittances to their native countries?
Look at it from this angle. I send money home to a young guy, and because of that money, this young guy wouldn't want to come to Europe. So I'm saving Norway some money.
That is a great way of looking at it, I guess. And for our last question of the evening, Hugo, would you want to take the lectern?
Honored Storsal, my name is Hugo. I have a quite similar question to the previous one, so I'll try to ask my backup question. When it came to the recent refugee crisis, which has been blown up in the media for quite some time, it came out that most of those arriving had come through human trafficking, or at least human smugglers. And then comes the question, when we encourage this immigration and do not put any stops on this, are we not encouraging those with no resources to try to contact these human smugglers? And are we not then encouraging one of the more horrible crimes that can be possibly done on this earth? When most of those coming are in contact with these, isn't that something we should be doing to try to limit that influence? And right now we aren't doing anything to control where how these come into Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. This sounds like a very international question. Do you want to take it, William?
Yeah, IOM in different countries has information campaign telling people about the dangers in traveling to Europe. And I will say this, those of you who were not born here, when you come to Norway and the first week you stand in front of a nice car, you take a picture, you send it home, you don't write in the letter that the car is not yours. And your relatives will assume that, oh, Grace came to Norway just within 1 week. She has a BMW, you know. So and then UN is saying that Norway is the richest country, one of the best countries for women and children, you know. So Norway attracts foreigners. But that is a very good question. Many people have been smuggled to Europe, and these guys see it as business, making money. So IOM, for example, would want governments to legalize, managing the influx of people. So far as you make issuance of entry visas difficult, then you encourage smugglers to be in business, you know. So it's...
So this relates a bit to what you said earlier about migration will happen no matter what you do, so you just have to make a legal or structured way of having it.
Yeah.
And otherwise people will just smuggle people in.
Yeah.
I think it's valuable to consider both the demand and supply side in this question. So to make it harder to migrate into Norway might discourage some people to go to human smugglers and say, I won't try this, but it is also punishing the population that is trying to get out of a difficult situation. And of course, what we are trying to do with our Utenriksdepartement is to try to insert aid into places that are filled with conflict so that the supply side doesn't send as many people. Of course, resolving war in Syria is not going to happen like that, and we have to deal with this demand at the same time.
Okay, but what could we do in the areas where the supply is rising to diminish the supply, I guess? What can we do there? Are we just going to pour more money into there and hope it gets better?
It's really messy and difficult, absolutely. And that's what it is. Migration is really messy and difficult, and it is currently the responsibility and the consequences are being distributed on the people who are already suffering from those conditions.
So whose responsibility is it to prevent human smuggling from Africa over into Europe?
Ours.
Ours?
Absolutely.
But isn't it also the responsibility of the countries they are traveling from to... They are criminals, these human smugglers, but it seems like not much is being done to stop them, at least, I don't know. Maybe. What is being done to stop them?
I remember the current Minister of Justice. She visited an African country recently, and one of the ministers said, I want my people to go to Europe instead, you know. So it means such a country wouldn't put anything in place to prevent the nationals from traveling. And then we have other countries who get money through taxes because they are nationals in Europe, you know. So, but otherwise, yes, I also know for a fact that IOM is involved encouraging governments in interstate agreements, you know. So agreements shouldn't be only on when you want to return people to their countries of origin. The Dutch government and the Ghanaian government, for example, they had a project where Ghanaians living in the Netherlands with education in medicine and health, they were given an allowance to go back to Ghana to work for about 3 months. So paying back the brain drain, contributing partly to the brain drain, you know. But when it comes to stopping migration from the sending countries, that is something that should be taken up in higher levels. Yeah. And IOM talks about that.
Thank you very much. Thank you both very much for a pleasant chat, and that concludes the thematic part of this evening at least. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much, and thanks for all the good questions from the audience as well. We will now move on to point number 9, which is any other business, or eventuelt, as we call it in Norwegian. So the podium is now open for anyone who has anything they want to share, and you're welcome to speak in both Norwegian and English.
Good evening, Stor. My name is Tyler, and I am the president of ISFiT for 2019. And I think this was a wonderful debate here this evening. And I want to see a show of hands, actually, who learnt something here tonight, something they didn't know before they came here. Excellent. I'm glad to see it, because this really is just the tip of the iceberg. Labour migration in Norway. There's so much more that we can discuss around the theme of migration, whether it's refugees crossing the Mediterranean, whether it's rural-urban migration in China, whether it's people smuggling in Hong Kong. And in ISFiT 19, we're going to create a forum for that debate to take place. And it's a really exciting time right now, because does anyone know what is going on right now? Yes, what is it? It is the Opptak for ISFiT 19. We are looking for gang leaders to join us. And so we're looking for everyone from culture, administration, theme. I have to make sure I get them all now because I've started listing them off. Student Peace Prize, administration, and economy. So no matter what you're interested in, no matter what you're studying, there is something that is going to interest you. And all of the board members are going to be around here all evening, so you can feel free to come up and have a chat with us. Otherwise, go to our website, isfit.org. We have all of the positions listed there. And just remember, the deadline for applications is this Sunday at midnight. Perfect. Thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking with you about ISFiT 19. Bye-bye.
As there don't seem to be any other speakers at this point, we can move on to point number 10, which is critics of the meeting. Is there anyone who wishes to say something here?
Ærede storsal, mitt navn Marianne Vågan, og jeg er fremdeles medlem. Min kritikk til ta møte at jeg skulle gjerne ønske at det var mer forskjellige synspunkt til dem som holdt foredrag her. Nå vi to som har hatt veldig gode og fine argumenter for migrasjon og hvorfor det viktig å få dem hit til Norge. Men det også en stor del av nordmenn som mot dette her. Og det kunne kanskje vært en mer interessant diskusjon og fått begge partene til å forklare sine synspunkt. Takk for meg.
Thank you very much. Before we end this meeting, I would like to give thanks to Sarah and William for great participation, and to ISFiT, Salongorkestret, Forsterkerkomiteen, Reski, Videokomiteen, Speedposten, Markedsføringsgjengen, ITK, Rådet, Lørdagskomiteen, Fotogjengen, our guards, as well as Kafé- og serveringsgjengen. And we also have to thank Samfunnets orkester for borrowing this one. Because ours is gone. The meeting is now adjourned.